Hi everyone, Pete from Retro Racing Lunatics. Thanks for all the new members, especially that's joined the group and getting in amongst driving and flying and smashing boats up and getting in amongst the group. It's really great, and we certainly all appreciate people getting there and sharing. Remember, what you learn, you please share. Everyone really appreciates it, and it only just enriches their arcade experience. Anyway, today I'm going to do just a quick and dirty video about how does Pete use force feedback to get the wheels to rock and roll on his G29 Logitech. This approach will more than likely apply to any other wheel that you've got that's got force feedback. I'm going to talk about the G29 today because that's what I've actually got, but as I step through this process, you'll see that there is a few instructions on how to actually get other wheels that you might have that might not necessarily play nice when you're trying to get the game going. What game am I focusing on today? Well, I'm really excited. It's actually going to be Initial D, the arcade. I'm not going to tell you where to get the game. The internet will provide it. I'm sure we all own the actual cabinet in our houses. Anyway, I'm going to go through and show you where to get the file in regards to force feedback. That's what I can do. So, first things first, need to make sure you install the game. Alright, so I'm not going to go through and how to put it on the hard drive and where to get the ROM and where to put it and how to set that up. That's for other videos. So I'm working on the basis that you've got the game installed, you've mapped the steering wheel and the controllers, you can get into the game and you can actually get it up and running. That's really going to be super duper important. The other thing that you need to have running with that's super really important is the actual latest version of Teknoparrot. Again, updates are coming through all the time. If you are a subscriber, then things like Initial D, the arcade is going to work for you. If not, then it won't, right? So just be aware of that. And the great thing is that with the latest updates with Teknoparrot, it actually just says in the list as to whether they're subscription or not. Anyway, to get the files for force feedback, all I really need to do is click on what I call the hamburger, go down to settings, go down to the button that says download force feedback plugin and click on that and open up the GitHub page. This GitHub page is amazing, right? So it will give you a whole history of all the different force feedback plugins over time. Now, each file, as you'll see here, is like a zip file, but that's a library of all the different games, including any of the new ones I've gone and add. So clearly, I'm excited about Initial D, the arcade, and there's a whole bunch of other Initial D ones that have been updated as well, which is awesome. The other thing probably just to note about this page as well is that whilst it lists all the different games, there'll be some tips and tricks. So I just noticed this. Please ensure that you set your force to force 10 in the test menu for Initial D, the arcade. So that's going to be really important to know. The other thing probably to do is to check the initial page of this group. So I'll just go back one and go into the actual force feedback arcade plugin page, scroll down and actually have a good read of the instructions. Now, it's important to do that because you may need some prerequisite files to be installed on your Windows PC. So in this case, they're talking about how to even get the GUI to run, and I'll talk about the GUI in a moment. And anything else that Windows needs to run in the background. There's some advanced information about different wheels. So if you've got Thrustmaster, PWMs and the like, there might be some additional things that you need to be aware of, especially if your wheel doesn't play nice. Just as a separate but related note, I've also got the latest version of the G-Hub software for my Logitech steering wheel in the background too. So again, I'm just working on the basis that you've got your wheel up and running and it's all ready to go, and now you're sort of diving into the plug-in space to get the wheel up and running. Anyway, back to the releases. So what I tend to do is I'll go to the most recent release, read any of the instructions. I might actually quickly look at other ones that are around it just in case there's anything else to note. Like I noticed there's a whole bunch of things for Fast and the Furious and Hummer and the like. And then I just go and download the zip, or the 7-zip file, whatever floats your boat. I'll download the zip file, which I have, and then I'll go and unzip it. So what I've done is I've just unzipped it to my desktop, and then I'm going to open that up. Within that library, you will see a whole bunch of folders for all the different games, and in some cases, different emulators as well. So in this case, I'm just going to scroll down to see if I can see Initial D, and this is the one. Initial D, the arcade version 2.3.1, which I've already got installed on Teknoparrot. I'm just going to open that up, and then I'm just going to select all these files. And like I said right at the start, I did a little bit of a cheeky cheat on here. In here, I will show you the path of where I've got the executable file on my particular computer, which is where I'm going to need to place the force feedback files. And then, because again the path name is incredibly long, I've actually got this all ready to go on File Explorer. So I've just gone up to there, I've gone, oh yep, that's where the shipping exe file is, and then I'm just going to go and actually paste it. And that's really step one to get force feedback running. Just get the files in the right place, okay? And it's generally where it wants the executable file to be, okay? From there, all I tend to do then is go into the force feedback plugin GUI, and I launch that. But before I go into the setup, I always check the force feedback test, because not the test, I mean the setup help, because sometimes there's some additional instructions that actually are in there. So the help file doesn't mean it's the same for every single game. So I think some of the older games that have been around that you might find problematic, read the help file. There might be some tips there and files that might need to go into various folders within Teknoparrot, for instance. So you might need to rename a particular file because the game needs it named in a particular way. Really important to read it anyway. So from there, I just go into the force feedback setup, and I get presented with this screen. Not going to go through each of these settings. I think it's quite self-explanatory. You can play around with this based on your particular wheel and to your particular liking. I would say 9 times out of 10, I would just leave it the way it actually is. It tends to do what it needs to do. If you've got a game that doesn't have native force feedback or it's problematic, look at the instructions, drop questions into the group for any of those customized settings. But I'm just going to take a leap of faith that Boomer's Lang and Mighty Mike and all those amazing people that did the force feedback plugin, God, it's a tongue twister, files have done the testing, or we've gone and helped and done testing or whatever, and it's pretty much set what it needs to be. Anyway, so from here, I'm just going to click on the wheel that I've got. Sorry, I was probably a bit too quick there. The Logitech wheel. Obviously, if you've got a different wheel, it'll be listed in there. Okay. From there, I tend to then go back and go into force feedback test. You'll see similar kind of menu options. These are all the different commands that might or might not work necessarily to do with your particular wheel. But in this space, what I do just to make sure that it actually hooks correctly, I'll go and select my wheel, and then I might use something like spring effect where I'll click it and the wheel will just move. Now, in this case, I did that and the wheel moved itself back into center position. So that's a really, really good sign. So from there, what do I tend to do? Okay, I'll just quickly go back out. And then I can then shut this down, go back into Teknoparrot, and then launch the game. However, remember, for this particular game, there was an instruction. What was it? Okay, it was, I need to go into the test menu for the actual game. So I'm going to go into the game now and hopefully not lose you because I'm still learning this OBS business. But I'll quickly see if this will actually record. If not, I'll then just try and do a part 2, and then we'll go from there. So in this case, I've got in my controller, I've got test and service mapped, which is going to be really important for this game. And I'm going to go and then launch the game. Pardon the French if I crash everything here or doesn't play nice. So it should just launch up very shortly. Fantastic, and that seems to be working okay. I tend to let the game run a little bit just to do what it needs to do. And the reason for that is that some of these arcade games do test patterns on force feedback, and it drops in its outputs and a whole range of other things that the force feedback plugin is actually going to look for. Okay, so this is all running. You can see it says don't touch the steering wheel. I just tend to behave myself and not do that. Okay, that's great. I'm just going to hit test to get into the test menu. Remember, I had T for test, S for select. That seems to be my two default commands that I have on my keyboard. And then it says select with the service button and press test button. So in this case, I'm pressing S. I'm going to go down to force feedback test. I'm going to go into there. You can see mine's already set to 10 because before I just wanted to make sure I wasn't going to make a liar of myself and do that. Now in this particular game, you're going to need to be a little patient, right? It's sitting there checking as if it was the real arcade cabinet, which of course I have, right? And it will do its thing. But you know, the main thing is here is that, oh great, it's just come up. I'll use test to go into up and down. In here I could just change the value, but in this case the game needs to be force equals 10, and then I'll go down to exit. You can do a whole range of other things in here as well, but I'm not going to go through every single option in there. And then I'm going to exit the game. Okay, now in theory that's it. Everything should work. The force feedback's been tested, you've got the game loaded so you actually know it actually works. You got it set to 10, and then from there it should just go in and your wheel should pick it up and run. Now sometimes what you probably just need to know is that the game doesn't automatically switch on force feedback. Sometimes the game will only trigger the force feedback when you're on the track. So just be patient, you know, get into the game, do what you actually need to do, and then hopefully everything kicks in and then you'll enjoy the force feedback. Anyway, I hope that was okay. If you've got any questions, throw them in the group. There's plenty of people that are more experienced in this than me, but I'm hoping that you'll find that of some use. Anyway, enjoy your evening and get into it.